Welcome to our webcast, New Survey Data, Findings for Effective Content Marketing to Engineers, sponsored by CFE Media and True Marketing. To get the best results from the webcast platform, please make note of the following as you participate in today's event. If you are having technical problems with audio or the slide presentation, click on the question mark at the top right-hand corner of your screen to bring up a list of system checks to make before escalating to an online technician. If you are experiencing issues with your slides or audio, please refresh your browser or click the Refresh Media button directly under the presenter's headshot. You can control the volume settings of this webcast by adjusting the volume on your computer or by adjusting the volume on the webcast platform. If you need a technician, type a message into the Ask a Question box and someone will get to you as quickly as possible. Individual technical questions will be answered in the Answered Questions on the left-hand side of your screen. You can use the Ask a Question box on the left side of your screen to type questions for the speakers during the presentation for the Q&A session at the end. You may ask questions at any time during the presentation. We'll get to as many as time allows. Questions that are for today's presenters will be answered verbally during the Q&A session at the end of the webcast. To download the presentation slides, use the Event Resources on the left-hand side of your screen. This webcast is being recorded, including the Q&A session, and we'll send you an email message with a link to the archived version after it's ready. Today's webcast is brought to you by CFE Media and True Marketing. To learn more about these two companies, please use the Event Sponsors tab at the top of your screen to be directed to their websites. I'm now happy to introduce today's distinguished speakers. Steve Rourke is a co-founder of CFE Media, LLC, a B2B publisher specializing in delivering high-value, engaging content to engineers using their preferred communication channels. Steve leads operations and new product development with a focus on developing technology that best services the evolving target audiences and customers' content needs. Prior to starting CFE Media, Steve was GM and Group VP of RBI's DM2 Decision Maker and Hospitality Publishing brands. Steve has a background in software development, holds an MBA from Boston College, and a mechanical engineering degree from the University of Iowa. Rebecca Geyer is CEO and co-founder of True Marketing based in Austin, Texas. She has over 20 years of global marketing experience, primarily in the B2B, science, engineering, and technology fields. Rebecca leads the True team in building strategic, thoughtful, and sustainable marketing plans for companies and their products, services, and campaigns. With her long history in PR and communications, her specific area of specialty is in defining the authentic, differentiated position and core messaging that serve as the building blocks of a company's go-to-market strategy. She and the True crew are passionate believers in taking a smart, integrated marketing approach to effectively compel technical audiences to take action. And no marketing plan is complete without clear, measurable objectives and a mechanism to report and tweak along the way. Prior to co-founding True Marketing, Rebecca was the Director of Corporate Communications and Investor Relations at Austin-based National Instruments, where she worked for 14 years. With nearly 2 decades working in scientific and engineering industries, Rebecca is known for her technical understanding of complex topics and passionate appreciation for the impact of scientists, engineers, and technologists on society. Rebecca is an active member of the Austin community and served as a robotics coach for over 10 years in her children's school. Rebecca and True co-founder Wendy Covey were named by the Wall Street Journal as one of the 10 most innovative entrepreneurs in America, and True Marketing has been named as a top B2B agency multiple years. Before we continue, please take a moment to remind yourself about dealing with technical issues during this presentation. Thank you. Here is the agenda for today's webcast. Steve Rourke will cover the background, including goals and methodology, respondent profile, valuable information sources, social media usage, and content usage frequency. Rebecca Geyer will cover search behavior, including search engines, page depth, and search frequency, preferred content formats, important content qualities, and importance of offering content. And now we'll hear from Steve Rourke.
Thank you for the introduction, Kristen, and I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webcast. We've had an excellent response to our inaugural Marketing to Engineers webinar and are already working on putting together a more in-depth Marketing to Engineers survey to be deployed within the next 6 to 8 weeks. So if you have suggestions concerning topics or areas that you'd like us to further explore with the next research study, please send your suggestions. You can send the suggestions directly to me or anybody at CFE Media. My contact information is listed at the end of the presentation. Before we jump into the research, I have a few things I wanted to mention. First of all, we've been growing our Marketing to Engineers program at CFE Media and have recently introduced a new website, blogs with experts, and a new e-newsletter. We've enlisted experts like the Content Marketing Institute. Many of you probably know Joe Polizzi. True Marketing, Rebecca and her team, and a marketing organization called Marketing Profs to help us with the content. So to find out more about what we're doing in this area, you can visit www.marketingtoengineersblog.com. And again, that information will be highlighted at the end of the presentation. Secondly, we have a lot of research information available at CFE Media. We ask questions concerning content consumption of engineers on all of our research, and we do about 20 research projects per year. So at the end of this presentation, we'll put up on the website, we'll put additional information concerning content consumption in a PowerPoint that's a little bit larger than what you're going to see today. Rebecca and I went through all of this material, and we wanted to take the major pieces or the key pieces out of the research and talk to you about it today, but there is a lot more available, and we will make that available online. Finally, Rebecca and I wanted to thank Kristen, Alan Maurer, Sam Brune, and our Director of Research, Amanda McLeeman, for putting together this broadcast. Many of you know it's not easy to put together the content and coordinate a webcast, but certainly our team did a great job. So on to the research. So Rebecca came to CFE Media, and it was last December, and said, you know what, guys, I think that there's a hole in the marketplace. I don't think that marketers have a very good handle or a solid handle on understanding the types of content engineers use on a daily basis. How do they make decisions? What search engines do they use? Where do they go to get their information? Once they get the information, what do they do with it? She came to us with an opportunity that we thought was intriguing. We sat down in early 2014 and kind of carved out some goals for a research project, the research project that we're really going to talk about today. We put together 4 goals for the research survey. The first one, which is highlighted here, is we really wanted to understand where engineers go to find quality information to help them do their jobs. So, where are they going? What are they doing once they go to those locations? And how does that information help them with their job? The second thing we wanted to understand is once they go to that location, what types of content do they prefer? I mean, is it downloadable? Is it videos? What kind of information type do they prefer once they go to that location? Then we wanted to really understand what they do with search engines. And, search engines are certainly a key part of most of our lives in terms of acquiring information, but we really wanted to understand how engineers use that information. And then the final goal that we put down was to understand the impact of content in the buying process. So, certainly they do searches every day on different things, but when they're actually looking to buy something or recommend a product or specify a product, exactly how does content fit into that scenario, and how and when is it used? So those were some of the goals that we came up with together at the beginning of this project. And then we said, well, let's now that we've got the survey somewhat outlined the goals, who are we going to send it to? So we took a look at a couple pools of potential audience members, people that would take the survey. And we got about 75,000 that we identified. So those names came from CFE Media, True, and some of our other partners. But they include people that are for the most part, engineers. So it's electrical, it's mechanical, it's control engineers, oil and gas, chemical engineers, people that buy, for the most part, specify and or recommend products or services. So we sent out the survey, and this was Q1 of this year, and we ended up out of the 75,000 getting about 700 people that completed the survey. So that's a pretty good response rate. Response rate. And what you find from that is that the higher the number of people that fill out the survey, the higher level of confidence you'll have in that the survey material or the content is more accurately reflects the marketplace. So we felt good about that, and now why don't we go on and we'll talk a little bit more about the respondents that actually filled out the survey. So one of the questions that we asked was what was the age range, or where did they fall into the age ranges, the people taking the survey? And one of the debatable topics that we've had in the past around CFE media, as well as in a lot of marketing departments, is that younger engineers react or use content significantly differently than more experienced engineers. So that's one of the reasons that we wanted to identify age ranges. And what you'll see on the pie chart on the left here is that certainly we had a lot of people that were more experienced. People that were greater or older than 40 years old was about 85% of the respondents. And so that leaves about 15% less than 40 years old. Now, a lot of people would say that, does that make a lot of sense? But really, when we do a lot of our research, or you look at other research studies, you'll find that most engineers in the marketplace today are on the average between 50 and 53 years old. So this probably does pretty accurately reflect what you'll see in the marketplace. On the right-hand side of this slide, you'll see the primary job functions of the people that filled out the survey. It's mostly engineers, and you can see that there's the folks that are over 40 and under 40. Still a big part of the people that filled out the survey were in the engineering fields. Certainly general management, usually general management that had been engineers, people that had been engineers in the past, product marketing, technical marketing, some sales, and then obviously the other category, and for the most part that includes people that are in the operations and logistics side of the business. Now let's move on and take a look at the valuable content sources that people go to find information to help them do their job. So on this slide, and there's a lot of information on this slide, but we asked the survey takers, where do you go to find information that helps you better understand the latest engineering technologies, industry trends, and products? So what you got back, or what we got back from asking that question, is good news for a lot of the vendors and manufacturers. For the most part, if an engineer is looking for information in those areas, they go to the supplier vendor websites. That's one of the top areas they go. And we hear that the vendors are spending a lot of money making sure that their websites are up to date, that they have easy access for people that are entering their sites. They can quickly find the information they need. And it looks like, according to the information that we have, that is a good use of investment time and energy. The second area that is obviously very high is search engines. So we know that engineers use search engines to find information. And Rebecca's going to spend more time in a few minutes talking about exactly how they do that. But the key to this is that making sure that not only is your website easily accessible, has the right information that can quickly be accessed by the engineers is important, but it also has to be obviously SEO optimized. And so we see a number of people spending time on SEO and the whole optimization side of the website, and that clearly makes a lot of sense. The next three areas, trade publications websites, and e-newsletters, clearly a place that engineers still go to for highly relevant and valuable information. It's been a core for a lot of these engineers for a number of years, and certainly we like to see that that's still a key place where engineers go. We try to provide the best information that we can to help them better do their jobs, and certainly they appreciate that and they visit those locations. The next one that you'll see is supplier vendor e-newsletters, another area that we see a lot of marketers spending time and energy building up their e-newsletter lists and the quality of content that they're putting in the e-newsletters. And clearly this shows, again, that it's important that the vendors, that the manufacturers do spend that time and energy making sure that what they put together in an e-newsletter is targeted for that audience. It allows the audience to get the information they need as quickly as possible. And then the last two on the right of this slide, you'll see blogs, online communities, and social media, a little bit lower in stature, if you will, but certainly part of the mix. Maybe not considered as highly valuable today, but we all know that these areas are growing in terms of significance. And I'll talk more about the social media side of this in a few minutes. So now we'll move on and see how information varies given age differences. So we'll go to the next slide. And on the next slide, I'll explain this pretty quickly here. But on the left column, you'll see folks that are 40 years old or younger, engineers. And on the right side are engineers that are over 40. And if you look down through this information, what you're going to see is that a lot of the information that is used by the engineers with more experience is the same sources used by engineers that are a little bit younger. And, you know, part of that might not, part of that probably makes a lot of sense. So when an engineer goes on board or starts working at a company, the first thing they usually do is they'll go to somebody that's their mentor or somebody that's been more experienced, and they'll ask them where do they go to get information. So it makes a lot of sense that the people that are older than 40 with the more experience have shared that information where they go with the folks that are a little bit younger. Some of the key findings that come out of this slide would include the following. Overall, more experienced engineers find more value in supplier sites, search engines, and trade pubs than the people that are a little bit younger than 40. Again, they're not that much of a difference if you add these numbers together. For example, for supplier and vendor websites, you'll see that the people that are over 40 adds up to 87%. The people that are 40 or younger, 78%. Again, very good sources for both age ranges. Search engines, same type of thing, which is somewhat interesting that the search engine numbers are a little bit higher for those that are over 40. Trade publications, a little bit higher for those over 40. And then the last two lines, if you will, the trade publication websites and trade publications e-newsletters, the numbers are almost exactly the same for those that are over 40 and those that are younger than 40. We'll move on to the next slide. Another area that gets a lot of interest, certainly in most marketing departments, is social media as a channel for information or for content to get to engineers. And if you take a look at this slide, what you're going to find out is social media clearly an important piece, again, of the marketing mix, and the trend has been positive over the years. So we track most of the social media activity every year, certainly on a lot of the research studies that we send out. But what you'll see that is not clear in this slide, something that we know, is that LinkedIn is clearly used in certain areas by engineers. So engineers use LinkedIn for networking. They use it to find people that are peers of theirs. They do a lot of Q&A inside of LinkedIn. And I think if most of you know, Control Engineering's LinkedIn site has about 69,000 people, members in that group right now, and the activity is significant. But it's mostly activity related to engineers asking other engineers for asking them questions related to challenges that they're seeing in their facilities. Google Plus is the second one that's highlighted here, and you'll see that this has a high number of people that actually use it. 14% use it very often. And the one thing that Amanda McLeeman, our Director of Research, and I discussed is we believe that a lot of people that signed up or said that they use Google Plus as a social media source may have been confused between Google Plus and Google itself. We obviously know that a lot of people use Google on a regular basis. We know that certainly as it relates to engineers in YouTube, that engineers use YouTube a lot for how-to types of videos. They want to see how to implement something or how to troubleshoot a product or something in the plant or a technology that they're trying to implement. Facebook, not quite as much on the B2B side. We know that certainly engineers use it extensively, just like everybody else, to communicate with folks they know or stay in contact with people that they went to college, high school with, or other general interest areas. But we don't see that being used a lot today, certainly by engineers, in order to find information to help them do their job. The next one we have highlighted is Twitter. Twitter is pretty important in a couple of areas for engineers. We think that Twitter is used very well at events. So if you go to conferences or events to share information, that information, the best way to share it at an event is certainly by using Twitter. The other thing that we think it's important for marketing departments to understand concerning Twitter is it's a good way to keep influencers up to date as to what's going on in the marketplace. So people like Mark Hosky, Amara Rosgas here at CFE Media, or Bob Vavra, a good way for the marketers, the vendors, agencies to keep us up to date as to what's going on is make sure that our guys you get their feed and we get your feed. They use that information all the time. So we'll move on to the next slide, which is really the types of content most often used by engineers. And so what you'll see in this slide kind of relates to the earlier slides, where the first questions we ask are, where do you go? Where do you go to find good information? And the idea behind this slide, or the information on this slide, is once you go there, what kind of information at that location helps you get the information or provides the kind of information you need to help you better do your job. And what you'll see on this slide is they often use product information, reviews, and specifications to help them understand, again, an industry trend, a product, probably more of a product, and services. So engineers are using specs all the time, and we hear this whether it be consulting, specifying engineer. Engineers are basically across the board. Engineers believe in specs. So the good news, I believe, again, here for the vendors is this is an area that you need to make sure is easily accessible, and the spec information that an engineer wants to access is in a convenient format. I think we all know that if you go to some websites and look at product specs, they're not easy to understand, they're not easy to find, and they're not easy to digest. But in the marketing departments, it's key, or it's certainly a high priority, or should be a high priority, to make sure that these areas are covered well for the engineers that visit your locations. The next one down is really trade publications, articles. And what we mean here is a lot of engineers use trade publication articles, or articles in general, to help them understand what else is out there in the market that they may not know about. So what are other people doing to improve productivity, or what are they using to help them address some of the challenges? And obviously from a publication perspective, those are areas that we certainly try to highlight and cover, not only on the website but in the magazines. The other area that you can look down here that a lot of marketers are spending time and energy on are white papers and case studies. The importance of these two pieces of collateral have grown significantly over the last several years. So the engineers that we talk with, and it's not borne out specifically in this survey, but when we ask engineers, how do they use white papers and case studies now versus several years ago, they rely on white papers and case studies to essentially be an objective view of a challenge or a technology that they're interested in. And so that's why we believe the white papers and case studies have grown so much in terms of significance to the engineers. On the right column, you'll see things like product videos and how-to videos. Now, this is somewhat of a snapshot, this survey, and we're going to be doing this on a regular basis, this survey, so that we can see the trends. But we feel that if you would have looked at the trends of how-to videos, some of the webcast and product demo videos looked a few years ago, these areas have probably grown significantly. We know that when we speak specifically with engineers, there's certainly interest in the product demos and more on the how-to videos. So you'll see more of us, and certainly the marketing departments need to understand that this is an area they need to not only pay attention to, but in specific areas, invest in. Moving on to the next slide. Breaking this down a little bit more as it relates to content used by age. And I'm going to let you spend a little time looking at this probably on your own. But I think the idea, the key findings that we got from taking a look at this information is there's really not a lot of difference in the types of content used by again, the more experienced engineer or the younger engineer. They rely on product information, reviews, and specs. They rely on articles. They rely on white papers and case studies. You can take a look at the numbers. But I think the implications here are that engineers at any age feel comfortable with these content types. And if you are building out these content types, from a marketing perspective, these areas will probably service you well. And I think the thing that's probably not highlighted here but is somewhat common knowledge is you got to make sure that the information is easy for them to access. It's in somewhat of a shortened, concise version. They don't look for 4 or 5 paragraphs of a lot of verbiage. They want to really have the information or the type of content get to the point quickly so that they can learn something and then either move on to get more information or take action. So now I'd like to turn over the presentation to Rebecca. And just before I do so, we've worked with Rebecca and True on a number of different projects, and we believe that their organization does a great job of not only understanding what engineers are looking for, but at the same time being able to work with their partners to provide that kind of information. So I wanted just to highlight they're a close friend of CFE Media. We appreciate all they've done. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Rebecca.
Great. Thank you very much, Steve. Wow, that's quite an introduction. It's very mutual. So, having worked for years in this industry, I've worked with control engineering in particular and plant engineering and the other CFE publications and the editors for so long. So just a wonderful group of people and absolutely wonderful publications that they put out and that are critical to us and for our customers in reaching the audiences that they attract. So thank you again, Steve and the CFE team. So Steve and I and our teams at CFE and True have worked hard to develop and execute and analyze the survey. We're thrilled at True to be partnering with such a stellar group over there at CFE and to be able to conduct these surveys. Steve talked at the opening about, I did come to him, this is great to be here today. It's about a 9 or 10 month project that's been ongoing. And so it's just great to be here today to see it all come to fruition. And he was very open to the idea of partnering, and I'm just thrilled that he and his team were, and we're excited to do even more. So, but for today, excited to share the key findings with you all. So thanks everyone for being here. It looks like we have over 100 people attending right now. So that's we obviously have some good data here that people are interested in. So let's dive in and look at more of the findings. Okay. So one of the first set of questions that we asked in this area about search marketing, the first here is no surprise. So which search engine do you use most often at work? And far and away, the market leader is Google. This has remained the same for a number of years. We do see Bing coming up and moving as a clear second, but not a big surprise here, and confirms what we thought to be true and what we've seen in other studies, that Google is the market leader. Again, very specifically though, it's important for all of you to understand we see this out there in the market, but what we're very interested in filling the gap in data is around engineers specifically. So good to know here that even with the subpopulation of engineers that all of us as marketers are targeting, they're mostly using Google. Okay. So the next slide then. So the next search engine behavioral question we asked was around frequency of searches. And so you see here this bar chart with the different options for frequency categories that are stacked here next to each other. And what was interesting to us was to see over half, nearly 55% of respondents search for content at least several times per week, and about 2/3 at least once per week. Now, when I saw this at first, I was actually a little bit surprised it wasn't more, because we know in our daily lives we're constantly on Google. I think or constantly on search, primarily Google. What is interesting about this, though, is if you think we tried to be very specific in how we worded these questions, and Steve and and Amanda on the CFE team were great partners in getting the questions just right to make sure that the data that came back was very specific. And we did qualify that it was for work specifically. So I think when you think about that, then it's really compelling and really helpful to see this. So more than half responded searching at least several times per week, and 2/3 at least once per week. Okay, and then the next largest group saying they search several times per month. So that's pretty obvious there. And then the next thing that we did was we looked at it by age. And when we break down the search frequency by age, the discrepancies are pretty slight. For instance, 4% more of the younger group search daily, so it's a 17% versus 13%. Interestingly, exactly the same number, 40% search several times per week, and then nearly 10% more of the older group say they search several times per month, 26% for the older group versus 17% for the younger. So overall, the under 40 group is searching slightly more often than the older group, I think is a safe summary for what we've seen here so far in this data. So to summarize at this point, people are mostly using Google to search. The majority are searching at least once per week. And again, this confirms what most of us already believe to be true, but the next question we asked about search behavior was the most interesting of all. In the next question, we asked about what they do once they have executed their search. Specifically, how deep will they go in page results? And you see the bar chart here. So this is really fascinating, and it reinforces the research-intensive nature of engineers' job. This finding shows that over 60% of respondents will go 3 to 10 pages deep in their search results to find the information that they're seeking. What's even more interesting as I looked at this is looking at the bookends of the chart. So even though the numbers are small, one page, 5% said they'll go one page, 6% they said they'd go more than 10. What is amazing to me about that is juxtaposing those two, and to know that 1% more respondents will view more than 10 pages than will view just one page. And I think what's so fascinating about this is where we really start to see a divergence of our engineering audience versus the masses. Close to the vast majority of clicks on Google, just across the board on Google, every day, day in and day out, happen on page 1. Don't quote me on this, but I think the number is above 80%, and most in that 80% is clicks on the top 5 results. So the bell curve of clicks on Google is happening on page 1 and even on the top of page 1. But what we see with engineers searching specifically for work is they will go way past the top 5 results or even page 1. And as we think about content marketing and the change that Google's brought about with giving the power now into the searcher, and in our case, for those of us targeting engineers, the great news here is that marketers targeting technical audience, like this group of engineers, engineers need information to do their jobs. And the great news here is they're going to work really hard to find it. So if we can develop valuable, compelling content, then the great news is our audience will work really hard to find it. Now, as a sidebar, one of the things we hear a lot, and we deal with this even ourselves as we're writing content and working with our customers, is bandwidth. It's really hard to get engineers who are the technical experts to dedicate time to create content. So this particular finding can be, and a couple more in the show, can be really helpful in having that discussion about, no, but if you spend the time, your content will get found because it's really compelling, it's really valuable, and and our audience is going to really search hard for it. Okay, so then just taking a deeper look at this data by the age comparison, we see the younger group is, as I've kind of thought about it, slightly less patient, or if you want to say the other way, a little bit more impatient than the older group, with 40% saying they'll only go to page 2 versus 31% of the older group. So a little bit of discrepancy there, but they're not huge swings by age. And interestingly, going to the very far more than 10-page finding, the same exact number in both groups, 6%, say that they will go more than 10 pages deep to find what they need. So again, as a marketer focused in this space, I personally find this very fascinating and very encouraging, and I hope you guys do too. Okay, so we have this great news that engineers are going to work really hard to find our content, but what format do they prefer to consume the content in, and what are their preferences specifically around video? So these were the next questions that we asked. So first, on the left-hand side, you see a purple bar chart listing the respondents' preferences for content format. Now, in this question, they could select all that apply. And what we see, the far and away winner is PDF. And so this was our intuition. It was great to see this confirmation. What's interesting, though, is the second, the visual imagery such as pictures, diagrams, and illustrations. And so I wanted to sidebar on this for just a minute because we write a lot of content, and I have, and the teams that I've worked on as marketers, we've always had content as a core part of our deliverable. And often when we begin as content developers, we think about the topic and then we get into the outline and the body content and we pore over the words, but the images are so important. They tell the story quickly by illustrating visually the detail that we're sweating over in the words. And so I really was happy to see this finding because it's a good reminder to all of us as marketers to prioritize those images. And at the outline stage at True, what we do is when we're thinking about a white paper or a piece of written content, at the outline stage, we're already thinking about the images. And one thing I also wanted to mention about this is we're also starting to think about the captions. This is the hidden gem in content is the image captions. And take time to think about the captions. I call them the cliff notes. If you look at the headline and the images and then the image captions as a consumer of content, those are the cliff notes that are going to sell you to go in and read the actual lengthy body copy that we all work so hard on. So don't forget about the images and captions. In fact, make them a priority at the very early stages of your content development. And it can be, remember that the captions can be a great place to embed your key messages that are in your longer copy. Okay, so then at the next finding here on the right, you see the pie chart. So on the left, in the purple, you see one of the formats was video. And although it's smaller at about a quarter, we wanted to dive into this and ask more. So we see that we know it's a growing medium. Gosh, we can just look at YouTube and know that. So we wanted to know their preference for links specifically. And we also were careful to make sure that we qualified it talking about the length of a video that's a product demo or how-to video. So that's what we asked about. This is something that marketers grapple with all the time. How long is too long for a video? So we asked respondents how long they're willing to watch a product demo or how-to video. And what we found is the sweet spot is more than 1 minute and less than 6. Beyond that, it drops off pretty dramatically. But interestingly, if you decide that your video needs to be 4 or 6, you're going to lose potentially the 29% that say they won't go that long, but you're going to gain the 29% that say they will go longer than 6. So we have some flexibility here. This was, I thought, really encouraging to see. Okay, so we know engineers will work hard to find our content on Google primarily. We know the formats they prefer. But the last set of questions we wanted to ask about was what makes a great piece of content and how does it impact their search and their preference and their buying process. So the first question is, what makes content valuable in their eyes? What characteristics make a piece of content stand out above the rest? And that was the next question that we asked. And here, whoops, I went too far. So of all the options we provided in the possible answers, the standout winner was technical accuracy. And again, this is something that we probably, it's great to see confirmation. We would imagine that engineers would say technical accuracy is important, but they absolutely picked it as number one. This is followed by something, again, that we heard just in the last question around format, inclusion of images and detailed diagrams. So again, that reminder to us about the importance of the images, the diagrams, the illustrations that help tell that story visually. And then thirdly, that it's current. And we know technology is constantly changing. Engineers have to stay abreast of the most current methodologies, best practices, new advances in processes or techniques, and they're looking to companies like those that you all on this webcast represent to provide them with this content. So we know they're going to search. We know they need it. They want it to be technically accurate, visually compelling, and current. And so what a great encouragement for all of us as marketers to know that we have this great audience out there waiting for this. Okay, so then the last finding that I'm going to share, we rounded out the set of questions around content with another one that I was really interested in personally to see the response to, and I was so excited when I saw the resounding response from our group of over 700 engineers, and that was around the impact of content in companies that they do business with. So to explain, we asked the engineers taking the survey to state how strongly they agreed with the following statement. You are more likely to do business with a company that regularly produces new and current content. And overwhelmingly, nearly 3/4 agreed or strongly agreed with the statement. So this was huge. And again, for those of you who struggle with getting your colleagues in engineering who are the technical experts to devote time to developing content, here's another finding that you can bring into that conversation to help encourage them and let them know that there is a real return on that investment of their time. So all of this and the other findings around search and the content preferences and those that Steve shared, it really sends a big message to us as marketers to be committed generously to producing high quality content. This is something that we preach all the time. It's true. We're working with our customers day in and day out to do this. It's what Joe Polizzi at Content Marketing talks about. It's why the whole influx of marketing automation software is having such a strong adoption, because with content you can bring so much efficiency to marketing. You can have more data. You can let your buyers take their time to engage in what they find interesting, and then you can bring in sales later. We had some really good questions around that I hope we'll get to in the Q&A. So it's a real win-win, being generous with content. And they're out there searching daily or weekly on Google, working hard to find it. They'll benefit greatly from your expertise. And in turn, we as vendors and marketers are able to strengthen our position by becoming a resource and a thought leader for those engineers, which builds trust. And over time then you grow awareness, preference, and demand in the long run. It's important to realize content marketing is a journey. It's not like a trade show or an ad where you write a check and design your booth or ad and show up and place it and get your leads. It takes time and commitment, and most importantly, a commitment to generosity to reap the rewards. So that's the end of my section of the findings. So I think I'm going to turn it back to Kristen to take us into the Q&A section of the webcast.
Thank you, Steve and Rebecca. That was a terrific presentation. Are you both ready to take on some questions? Please type your questions for today's presenters in the Ask a Question box on your screen. We will get to as many questions as we can. Questions will be answered verbally during the Q&A session. Within a few days, this presentation will be available for on-demand viewing, and we will send you an email message with a link connecting directly to it after it's ready. Steve and Rebecca will also take some time to answer any of the questions that come in today that we don't have time to answer during the live event. We'll also send you a link to those posted questions. As a reminder, you can download this presentation from the Event Resources tab on the left-hand side of your screen. We've had some great questions come in from the audience, so let's get started. Steve, what is the one thing to remember when marketing to an engineer?
The one thing, let's see, there's many things, but if I had to narrow it down to one, I would say probably trying to understand the engineer's behavior. So if you're going to market to an engineer, you have to clearly understand as much about the behavior of that engineer and how they make decisions as possible. I mean, Rebecca just mentioned marketing automation, but some of the fundamentals associated with marketing automation are understand, who you're marketing to. There's persona development. Who are you marketing to? What do they look like? What behavior do they make? As they go through the buyer's journey, what moves them from one part of the journey to another? And really understanding, and there's certainly some customers out there that do a great job of putting that information and the time and energy into persona development, buyer journey development, and then assisting that engineer make those decisions by providing them information that will move them from one stage or one phase of the buyer's journey to another. So, I know there's probably one thing, if you had to ask me, would be understand what their behavior is, map it out if you need to, and then make sure that you're providing content during the cycle, the buying cycle, when they want it in a way that they want to consume it.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Rebecca, this question is for you. How can we use content to focus on targeted clients?
Okay. That's a great question. And we work with our customers a lot to try and answer this question for their target audiences. Steve talked a minute ago about personas, and really for this question, that's where I would actually start at the end of the question, which is the target audience. Knowing who your target audience is very specifically. Even if you say control engineer, there's a wide spectrum of people who fit that particular job title or engineering discipline. So, how old, you can get into demographic information such as how old they are, gender, of course, job title, but more than job title, what influence do they have? How do they find information? What do they care about most or least? By going through that process, you know exactly who you're talking to. And once you know that, the next thing is think about the biggest challenges that your very specific persona is facing. Also, put together a list of trends that you're aware of that are affecting them. And then next, what expertise do you have that can help them solve their problem or learn best practices to approach it more effectively? So you end up with, exactly who your audience is. You're thinking about their challenges, what trends are going on, what unique expertise do you have that's related to that. So you start to have this really big list of potential start of topics. Then you need to map that to the funnel, the top, the middle, and the bottom to think about, okay, for that particular topic or for that particular persona group, here's a whole set of content that's going to drive them from the top to the middle to the bottom of the funnel. And we actually have a video series that we did on this on the True site. If you go to, it's truemarketing.com and go to our resources page, if you scroll to the bottom of the page, go to our True Talks on Demand webinars, and you'll see a part 1 and part 2. The whole thing's about 9 minutes between both part 1 and 2, and it walks you through how to do this entire process. And so I'd encourage you to check that out. But really start with who you're targeting first, and then start to build out the challenges and your expertise, and I think you'll come up with some really great topics.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. Next question for you, Steve. How do engineers react to social media?
Again, good question, and there's a large range of reactions to social media by engineers. You've got folks on one end of the spectrum that use social media all the time. So they'll be on YouTube looking at videos. They'll be, Twitter enabled using Twitter. They will be on LinkedIn asking questions and answering questions. So you'll have that end of the spectrum. But I think some of the data that we just talked about indicates that a lot of engineers are still, I guess in my opinion, somewhat skeptical of the use or the effective use of social media as a whole. I think that what they need to do, or if I was running a marketing organization that was trying to service engineers and trying to figure out where I spend my time on social media, I would try to go to where they are. And let me just throw this out. So on the LinkedIn group for automation and control engineering, there's a lot of activity going on in that group itself. if I was a vendor, I would go to that location, and I think a number of the people probably on the phone do this, and then I would make sure that when a question is asked that I engage and obviously talk about how, if it makes sense, how my product, service, or company can support whatever's been asked. And I just don't see enough of that being done. And so I guess the point is engineers go to that location because they feel they're getting good information. They interact on a regular basis. And I think the opportunities for vendors and manufacturers is to go in there and work those locations certainly on LinkedIn, and make sure that they're available to answer questions when asked. I think overall, though, I think it's emerging, evolving, the social media servicing the engineering community, and I think we're going to continue to see areas where it's used more and more often. I still think that the how-to videos in the YouTube world is going to be a big area that in 3 or 4 or 5 years, instead of just releasing a press release, you're going to have a press release, and some vendors do this today, by the way. They release a video on how to install a new product or how to integrate it into the typical system, and how to effectively get support all through the use of YouTube and how-to videos.
Thanks. Rebecca, what do engineers like to see in case studies from manufacturers?
Yeah, that's a great question, and case studies are such an important piece of the content plan. Often we recommend they don't have lead forms in front of them, that they help tell your story and prove that credibility. So having a lot of case studies, we strongly recommend making that a significant part of your marketing, of your content marketing efforts. So specifically to answer the question, what do they like to see in case studies? Number one thing is details. They want to see details. So to elaborate on that, how the application was being solved before. So this is how we approach them at True. We make sure first we understand, okay, what were they doing before? What spurred them to go find a different way, or to look for a new product or service or system or a different approach? So what were they doing before? What were the challenges they were facing? Because often those same challenges are being faced by engineers that are in similar applications. So getting that documented. And then why they selected a new approach. What other alternatives did they look at before they ended up going with the particular approach that you provide? What challenges and benefits came? So they, in the case of if you're writing a case study for your own company or for a product or a particular campaign, why did that customer choose your way? And what were the alternatives they looked at? And what were the trade-offs that they ended up making in the process? And what risks did they have to take to go down that path? And then ultimately, of course, everyone wants to know what was the reward for the risk. So it could be performance, cost savings, made them more agile, gave them more flexibility, whatever that ROI is. But could be qualitative, could be quantitative. It's always nice if you can have the quantitative, but we know it's hard sometimes to be able to nail that down. Often it's because people don't have the baseline. They don't necessarily know where they're at now, so they can't necessarily tell you the improvement. And we actually have a blog post called 8 Quick Tips to Create Great Case Studies that's on our blog. You can go to the site and search it, or you can just probably even search it on Google, but 8 Quick Tips to Create Great Case Studies. And we go into a lot more detail there about with some guidelines for doing that. So thanks for the question.
Steve, do engineers prefer direct search or directories to find supplier resources?
A good question. I think most of them feel very comfortable with just direct search. But if you use direct search, and we have this discussion internally every once in a while, it's hard to find, a direct search where you would see that there would be an advantage of direct search to find a distributor of a vendor over just going to the vendor's website and, going through the directory of distributors. So I also am somewhat curious when I hear, Rebecca's very interesting stats earlier about how deep engineers go to find information. One is I think they're probably very curious, so they go multi-page deep. But it would also tell me that maybe they're not finding what they want on page 1, 2, or 3. so they have to go so deep. But I guess to get back to this question, I think it really depends on what the engineers are looking for. If they're looking for, general information, certainly a direct search makes a lot of sense. If they're looking for even detailed product information, they've got the product model, product name, they probably do direct search. Directory is probably not really good for that. But if they're looking for a distributor, or let's say a lot of the manufacturers are looking for systems integrators, I think probably the better place to go than just doing a search on integrator in my area would be to go to something like CSIA's directory, certainly CFE Media. I mean, there's a number of them. Vance Van Doren has a directory. But I think the idea is there's some very good directories that help engineers find information that they want. So I hate to give you the answer, it depends, but I think it kind of depends.
Rebecca, why don't you take this next question? Bullets or lots to read in advertisements?
Okay. Well, I think the question here is specifically about ads. So let me start there. So in an ad specifically, you definitely want to stick with bullets. You don't want to have a lot of copy there. You want to have a strong headline, an image, and very little copy. You only have a couple seconds, and all you're trying to do with an ad is get someone to take the next step, not to tell them everything in an ad. And I have many great old stories from NI of a room of all these engineers and all these designers and marketers and campaign managers, and we're trying to agree on an ad, and it's really, really tough. And someone has to be that directing the group north to remind everybody that you're only trying to get them to take an action. You only have a couple of seconds to get them to do that. Interestingly, to compare that to the web, on the web you have a little bit more time. You have 10, say, to 25 seconds to pique a visitor's interest before they leave, and users are only going to read about 20% of the words on any given page. And this is data from Jacob Nielsen from the Nielsen and Norman Group. We know that in eye tracking studies that online that people gloss right over large blocks of text and go to images and sets of bullets. So I would say hands down in ads and even online, you want to stick with bullets as you're on the higher level pages of your site. I think there's a strong correlation to being able to be more verbose as the deeper you are in a particular site. As engineers find more, they keep clicking in. It means they want more information, and you can elaborate more as you get deeper into the site. We actually do have a blog post about this too. We did a fun blog post a while back called Make Your Print Ad Pass the 2-Second Test. You can check that out on our blog as well.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. We only have time for one more question, but as a reminder, we will, Rebecca and Steve will answer the rest of your guys' questions that we didn't get to today. We had some great ones come in, and we're really excited about them. So Steve and Rebecca will take some time to answer those, and we'll do this last one now. Steve, I'm going to direct this last one to you. What's the best time and day to reach engineers with e-blasts and e-newsletters?
Okay. That's a pretty easy one for us. We send out a lot of emails. I think everybody probably on this call knows we send out thousands of emails. We've done a lot of testing as to when do engineers open and then take action based on when we send out emails. And what we have found is Tuesday through Thursday between central hours of 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. seem to be the most effective for us as an organization. There's other people that have seen other times and days work. Certainly because our audience are pretty much all engineers, we think that that's probably a pretty good bet that the times and dates I gave you are days. The other thing that we could always do is do your own testing. It's similar to what we do, where you'd send it out on different days, the same e-newsletter or the same message, and see how people react. But yeah, I would think that you're pretty safe Tuesday through Thursday, 10 to 1. Certainly Monday, Friday are tough. Weekends, some people believe in that. We've tried that to not a great success. So I guess that would be my answer.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks again to our great speakers, Steve Rourke and Rebecca Geyer, for sharing their time and expertise. On the screen now, you guys should see their contact information. Please feel free to reach out to them with any questions regarding today's webcast. Please take a moment to check out a list of CFE Media and True Marketing resources. These are hyperlinked directly to their informational pages. A link to the full set of research findings is included on this page. Now that we're just about done, we want to hear how we did. The exit survey will pop up on your screen as soon as this webcast ends. Please take a moment to complete it as we use this information to improve our webcasts. On behalf of CFE Media and True Marketing, thanks for attending this webcast. Copyright 2014 CFE Media. This concludes our webcast. Thank you.